Our speaker today is my good friend Patrick Tian, CEO of Gazelle Systems, creator of the Rhythm software, and author of Execute Without Drama. Patrick's an award-winning international speaker and a serial entrepreneur who has started and exited several multi-million-dollar companies. His prior company was 151 on the Inc. 500 list, and he's a winner of the North Carolina Ernst & Young Entrepreneur of the Year Award. And on our webcast today, Patrick's going to teach the 4 secrets to develop a winning annual plan for 2012. Patrick, it's great to be here with you today.
Okay, thanks, Ryan. And I can still see people joining our webcast. This is great. Welcome everybody to this quick session. By now, you guys probably know I do this once a quarter to help our clients as much as I can. So let's kick it off. Let's get going. Without further ado, the first question I want to kind of kick it off with is kind of ask you guys a question: is would you pass the hallway test? And so the best companies know how to keep focus and get things done. And once you think about the past years, how many of your years have been memorable? In other words, you finished the year and you kind of remember what the year was all about. That's what I mean when I say memorable. So to test that, I want to ask you if you passed the hallway test. And the challenge is this: if I walk down the hallway of your company and I asked anyone in your company what was 2011 all about, what would they actually say? Would they be able to answer the correct question with what this year was all about, or would they all answer it in the same way, right? So I've done this hallway test in a number of companies, and the great companies, the ones who are really working in sync, people can pass that hallway test. And that's a very few number of companies that have passed that hallway test when I've done it. So what I'm thinking about is the reason why we look at this annual planning thing is I would like you guys to be able to pass this hallway test. So let me share with you, kick it off with a story of success from a company called Image First that was able to pass this hallway test. And back in 2008, Jeff, the CEO, decided that he really wanted his company to understand 4 pillars of operational success for them. The first pillar was was customer loyalty. Second one was associate pride. Third one was growth, and the fourth one was profitability, so they could maintain a sustainable company. So in 2008, Jeff decided that he was going to make that the year of the Image First Way. He wanted to launch and make Image First Way a way of being at this company. And so in our annual planning session, we tried to take each one of these pillars and make that a quality thing throughout the year. What happened is that in 2008, the recession actually began to hit our country over here in the U.S., as you guys probably recall. And so the 2008 annual plan that we created together was actually very helpful to them, because one of the pillars was how to prepare for growth. And during that year, they looked at the key initiatives on the annual plan, and then Jeff said, you know what, guys, recession's coming, and the best way we can prepare for that is to be on the offensive, not defensive. So let's work on our pillar here of growth. And so in Q3, they worked on the pillar of growth, and the phenomenal thing was that when the recession actually hit, this company already had the plan for growth, and they grew through 2008, 2009, 2010, and even this year, they're still growing. So they're doing great. So his annual plan kept him focused and out of trouble. How about yours? Will your annual plan keep your team focused and your company out of trouble? I'll tell you one more quick success story that he had was he wanted his team to really show customers that we care, so that his customers would end up becoming loyal, more loyal. Now, I didn't tell you this, but Image First, they're a linen company. They do linen laundry out of the Philadelphia area, and they do linen laundry for healthcare, for the healthcare industry. And so Jeff always tells me, Patrick, my business is really simple. It's not complicated. It's not high tech. And so they really have to do a great job with showing customers that they care. And one time, one of the success stories he had was he received a love letter. He receives love letters, by the way, from his customers every month. And one of the love letters he received was a story about one of his drivers dropping off laundry. Noticed that one of the office nurses was just not having a good day. So he asked her how she was doing, and she was not having a good day. And by the way, her teammates didn't quite notice, but he noticed. So he took her across the street to McDonald's for a coffee on a very bad day. And that generated a love letter back to the CEO thanking Jeff for the care and concern that his team showed her. So in this case, it didn't need an executive to tell this guy what to do. He kind of did it because it was just the right thing to do for the company. So that was the power of the Image First Way and how he used his annual plan and his key initiatives to make that very, very real for everybody else in the company. So I've got a tool for you. Hopefully you received this tool in the email that was sent out for this webcast. This is a very simple one-page tool. By the way, one of our promises to our clients is that we keep things really simple for them. Well, the test of my brand promise of simplicity is that all our tools are one page. So here you have a one-page tool to kind of help you think through your annual plan. We're going to use this throughout the webinar or webcast today. The first secret, I got 4. The first secret is to really think about what goes on the plan. Now, as we polled earlier, 80% of you already do annual planning. So this is not something new for you guys. You guys already do annual planning. And in about 40, 45 minutes, I'm not trying to revamp how you do it, okay? I'm thrilled that you guys do your annual plan. I just want to give you a couple of ideas to try and maybe a couple of pitfalls that you can avoid. And by the way, I always suggest that you guys walk away with just one key thing that you would try, not too many things, just one, so that the team doesn't have overwhelming things to get adjusted to. So the first question, or the first secret is, what gets on the plan? What are the correct 3 to 5 key initiatives to do? So at Gazelle Systems, we've done more than 1,000 planning sessions over the last few years for our clients. Now, this includes quarterly planning, annual planning. So we draw from the experience of these 1,000+ planning sessions, not just by myself, but the coaches that work with us. So I'm going to share a few key moves with you. First key move is that you need to have a stretch goal. So this is the power of a stretch goal. I call it a super green goal, by the way. And I kind of have the image of a rubber band here because when you look at a rubber band and you don't stretch it, there's really no energy there. But when you stretch the rubber band, you begin to see that there's kinetic energy in the rubber band. The same thing happens with a stretch goal, or I like to call it actually a super green goal. When you guys have a goal for the company that is outside your comfort zone, it creates what I call positive tension. It puts energy into your company. It gives you the opportunity to make that year probably more memorable and more remarkable than otherwise you would have. So in the book Switch, love this book. If you guys have attended my previous webinars, I suggest you read this book. And in his book, he talks about a shag. And a shag for him is similar to the super green goal for me. A shag is a somewhat hairy, audacious goal. And he says in his book, Chip and Dan, he's saying in the book, that similar to Jim Collins having a big, hairy, audacious goal for the long term, the 10 to 25-year goal, in our case, he's suggesting that we have a short, somewhat hairy, audacious goal for the year, right? So I call this a stretch goal. He calls it a shag. Shag kind of sounds cool. So something exciting, something game-changing, something memorable, something that your year isn't just about making money. So I thought I'd share with you a personal story. Back at Metasys, this is in the mid-90s, Metasys was growing quickly. We did transportation software. This is the Inc. 500 firm that Ryan mentioned to you about that I ran for a while. Metasys ran for about 7 years before we sold the company. And we woke up, I think it was like 1995, and we woke up and we've been reading Jeffrey Moore's book. For the folks in the audience who are software technology people, I highly suggest you read Jeffrey Moore's books. They're kind of classics, but they still apply even in our current day and age. So, he's got Crossing the Chasm, he's got Inside the Tornado, and so Inside the Tornado, he describes his ecosystem. And in his ecosystem, the gorilla is kind of the #1 guy or gal, that's the king. He says that the gorilla, there's a couple of chimpanzees, and then you look at a bunch of monkeys. The rest are just monkeys. And so we at Metasys kind of knew that we did not want to be a monkey. We decided that year that we were big enough and had enough momentum to go for #1. So our super green vision for that year was to become the gorilla, and we called it, the year of the gorilla. We announced it to the company. We talked about how it was so important for us to be #1 in our space. Our head of development kind of came into the company meeting with a gorilla suit, and we did a couple of crazy things. We went and bought stuffed gorilla toys, and we put a T-shirt on these gorillas because, we didn't want to ship our clients naked gorillas. So we shipped them a gorilla with a T-shirt on it with a user conference T-shirt. And a crazy thing happened, a couple of amazing things happened. First, our clients called me to complain. They said, Patrick, aren't I a good client? I said, yes, of course you are. And they'd say, well, we don't understand why you left us out. I said, what do you mean? And they said, well, you left us out of the user conference. You shipped us these gorillas and they got user conference on them, but we were not invited. And at first I said, the user conference wasn't for you. The user conference was really for the gorillas. And we all laughed about it. But the truth is we didn't have a user conference. But the gorillas had a T-shirt that said user conference. So that year, we were pretty much kind of pushed into having our first user conference, which was wildly successful because of those gorillas. And then another thing that happened was we hung those gorillas from the ceiling tiles in the office. And one of the analyst groups, Advanced Manufacturing Research, visited our office one day. They were looking at us, reviewing our software, and they asked us why these crazy gorillas were hanging from the ceiling tiles. We explained to them our quest to become the gorilla in the industry, that this was the year of the gorilla, that by the end of the year we would be there, and that one of our tests would be that Gartner Group or AMR, a couple of these major analysts would actually write about us and say that we're the gorilla. To our shock and surprise, the following Monday in their research note, the headline title was Metasys, the gorilla of transportation software. So I share this with you because it was amazing. The stretch goal created lots of good results that we didn't plan on, the user conference, AMR, and with the help of folks like that, we did finish the year recognized by AMR and Gartner Group as the leader of our space, the gorilla of our space. So what a difference a year can make for us, and I want you to think about that. What a difference a year could make for you as well. So this short, somewhat hairy, audacious goal drives what I call your doing plan. I asked the polling question earlier. How many of you actually plan top-down versus bottom-up? 65% of you plan top-down, 35% bottom-up. So I would suggest that you plan top-down. In other words, start with a somewhat audacious goal, this super green goal out there, this amazing year, and then use that goal to drive your doing plan. What are you actually going to do this year? And then your doing plan drives your financial plan. I want you guys to think about your financial plan as a way to help you achieve your goals, not the other way around. So if you do that, what happens is that if you start off with a big goal like that, what's going to happen is you should also do your bottom-up planning for reality checks. When you do your bottom-up planning, you will notice when you plan from history, you will approach the goal, but you quite get there. That's the beautiful thing about starting with a huge goal, is that that goal stretches you further. So when you do that, you find that that this gap is created, the gap between your somewhat audacious goal and your financial plan. And this is what I mean by positive tension, positive energy, and then you're going to have to brainstorm. You're going to have to brainstorm to figure out what you have to do to get there. So, Plato said necessity is the mother of invention. If you have this gap, you then have to brainstorm, discuss, and the necessity of reaching there will allow you to then think of the right things to do. A little bit more than just the things you think of if you're only doing bottom-up planning. So I'm suggesting you do both. I would suggest you start with the somewhat audacious goal. And then you do your bottom-up planning for a reality check. And then in the middle is what we call the gap, where you go ahead and brainstorm to figure out how to solve and how do you fund that gap, by the way. Funding that gap is also very important because you don't want to unintentionally meet up with the first law of entrepreneurial growth, right, which is growth sucks cash. So I want you guys to do what I call the Definition Postcard. I want you to think about what is your year of the gorilla, right? What's that for you? What can be so compelling for 2012 that will be memorable, remarkable, that will make a company totally awesome in 1 year? Don't think of a year as a very short time. Think of it as a time to achieve something great. So to do this, I'd like you to jump into the time machine. So this is a time machine, right? I have one sitting in my living room. I'll rent it to you if you need one. But all jokes aside, this is a time machine. And I want you to jump into the time machine. I want you to then set the date, fast forward to December 31st, 2012. You get out of the time machine, and you had a great year. And by the way, that's the only rule I have. For some of my friends who've done this with me, they'll say, but Patrick, something went wrong and I had to fix it. But no. The only rule I have, guys, is that you had a great year. So you fast forward to the end of 2012, you had a great year. I want you first to describe that year, right? Describe the year. Why was it great? Okay? And then what were the 3 things that happened? So you get your time machine, you zip forward to the year, end of the year, and you describe the year in the past tense, all right? In other words, we'll finish the year. This is why it was great. These were the things that happened. So when I did this a long time ago at Metasys, we said, okay, we're going to be the gorilla of transportation at the end of the year, right? End of the year. And it'll be so awesome, I mean, we're going to be easier for us to close deals, number one, because we're the gorilla. That's why we care. That's why this is important to us. Gartner Group AMR, they're going to write about us. They're going to say that we are number one in our space. It's going to be great. Our customers are going to love us for that, and all kinds of. So that's the description of what a great year looks like. And then what are the top 2, 3 things, right? The top 3 things that had to happen for us to achieve that. Well, clearly, one of the things had to be that we had to engage with the AMRs and Gartner groups and get them to actually write about us. So that was one of the top 3 things. And so what are the top 3 things for you? So now it's a good time to pull out your tool. And you'll see I've highlighted the first section, right? The first section is for you to think about, first describe your vision of the great year, and then come up with your top 3 or 5 things. So I'm going to give you guys a minute to kind of do this. Now, I'm under no pretense that you can do this in a minute, but some of you are in the room with your teams. So I'd love for you guys to just have a very quick discussion. What's hitting you top of mind right now? What are you inspired to write down for a vision for 2012? Okay? What's your shag for 2012? So take about a minute, do that, and while we're doing that, you should then come up with the 3 to 5 things that made the year great and put it on the right side that's highlighted. And so while we're doing that, I figured I'll see if there are any questions so far about the stuff that I've shared with you. So while some of you are kind of discussing this with your team, there may be others that don't have a team with you, that may have a question or two. Let me take a minute and just see if there are any questions, Ryan.
Yes, Patrick. We got one question here from Ken. Ken asks if you can put secret 1 in the context of a company in crisis due to the economy.
Can you say that again? I couldn't hear you very well, Ryan. I'm sorry. Just repeat the question.
Yeah, it says, it's from Ken. He says, can you put secret 1 in context of a company in crisis due to the economy?
So if you are a company in crisis due to the economy, it's even more important, right? Because if you, as you go through a tough waters, you need to have a vision of what's going to come out the other end. How are you going to feel when you come out the other end? What does a great year look like for you when you finish it? So, for example, a great year doesn't necessarily mean 100% growth or 50% growth or anything like that. I mean, a great year, I'll give you an example. Back in 2001, we had the internet bubble, and I had a really tough year. And I had to let go some people, I had to do layoff. Oh, it was horrible. And what we decided as our goal for that year was we just wanted to get to the other side with the 16 people that was left on our boat. And so we created the image of the boat. We had 16 people in the boat, wanted to get to the other side with everyone on the boat. And that was kind of our vision for the year. But that was, just like your questioning, Ken, that was a company in crisis, and therefore we had that as our vision for the year.
We have another question. Who should be in the meeting? Do we do this together or as individuals?
So that's a good question. I would say, first of all, you should probably do this with your executive team. And then what you want to do is have everyone in that meeting actually write down their individual time machine exercise. So do it as individuals. Have everyone go into a time machine and do this quick exercise. It only takes a minute or 2. And then collect everyone's top 3 things, put it on the wall, and now you discuss, debate, and then vote for the top 3 to 5 that are on the wall. So you kind of get the individual brain time of everyone in the room, and then you kind of put it on the wall, discuss it, and then vote, and then exit with the top 3 to 5. Okay? Okay. I think that's good. That took a couple of minutes. Let me move on. So after you've done this time machine exercise, you got your top 3 to 5 things, right? The question then you want to ask yourself is there anything else? Is there anything else you really should consider? And there's 3 things that I think you should consider. You should do a start-stop keep. Start is the things that you need to start doing that you don't do today. Stop are the things that you should stop doing that's wasting your time. And keep are the things that are working well, that you want to keep doing. You don't want to forget these things as you plan for new things. By the way, Ken, I think, was the one who asked about the crises thing. If you're in crises, you want to do this start, stop, keep. And you want to really do it because when you're in crisis, you don't have, things are changing and you don't have a lot of time. You may want to consider more things that you can actually stop. So opportunities and threats, what are things which are coming next 2-3 years? And then what's on your strategy? People ask me about alignment. Alignment is actually about making sure that your execution plan for the year lines up with your strategic plan. What's your 3 to 5 year plan? So you've got all these things, how do you choose them, right? So you've done your time machine exercise, you've got your start, stop, keep, opportunities and threats, 3-year plan, key thrust. And so what you want to do now is debate and discuss, because at the end of the day, you can only have 3 to 5 things. That's it. You cannot have too many things. I like to say top 3 initiatives, even though our one-page strategic plan has 5 slots. I think the less you have, the more focus you get. The more focus you get, the more likely you are to succeed. Because I get the question, hey, I did this definition postcard, but now it's got too many things to do. I can't do that because I got this other thing here, X. And X is more important than my Shag. And I would say maybe not. Take a look at it, right? Will your Shag actually help you get further, better, faster as a company? Or will the other things that you already have on your list actually help you more than the Shag? So at the end of the day, you want to pick the top 3 to 5 things that help you the best in growing the company to having the best year you can possibly have. Okay, so you notice in the tool, I've got the gray area where I documented your next step, right? So you've done step 1, which is your vision for the year, your top 3 to 5 things that made the year great. Then you've done, now if you read the gray part, I'm saying, hey, go do your start, stop, keep, your opportunities and threats, your 3-year key thrust, that kind of stuff. And from all that, have your discussions, your debates with your team, and decide what are the key initiatives for the year. Now, you'll notice on the right side, I've got what quarter do you actually work on it, right? Now, one mistake I see some people make, and I want you guys to not make this mistake, but one of the pitfalls I see people make is they take each of their 5 key initiatives and they divide it into quarters. They say we'll do 1/4 of number 1 in Q1, 1/4 of number 2 in Q1, and so they basically take their 4 or 5 key initiatives and kind of divide it into 4 pieces and finishing it 1 in Q1, Q2, Q3, Q4. I suggest we do it differently. I suggest you take 1 or maybe 2 at the very, very most. I prefer 1. Take one of those key initiatives and make that the driving focus for Q1, right? Then take the second key initiative, make that the driving focus for Q2, okay? Focus for the quarter on one big thing. You get a lot more done to focus energy on that than if you did a slice of each thing. A slice of each thing will not allow you to maximize the execution resources in your company. So take that one of those initiatives and really kick it off in Q1. Now, sometimes as you go along the way, the year changes. I've never seen anyone create an annual plan that didn't undergo change because life happens, so things change. So you might find, for example, that in Q2, you deviated from this plan, and that's okay. So for example, I shared with you about Image First, and the first quarter they really powered on the whole customer loyalty thing. In the second quarter, they were really supposed to jump onto helping the associates, take pride in what they do. But at our meeting, the team felt like they had made a lot of progress in the customer loyalty stuff, but they were so close to the end zone, they just wanted one extra quarter to really double down and punch it through. And they did. Right? So my point is, we do quality planning, but we want to come back and refer to these key initiatives to see if we can actually use it. And sometimes a key initiative that was planned for later on in the year get pulled forward faster. I actually have an example of that later on in this webcast. So once you've done this, you want to test. Okay? How do you know if your key initiatives are plan worthy? Okay? At the end of the day, you want to make sure that you've got the right things on your plan. And so here are 3 questions I asked real quick. It's critical for achieving your financial results, right? So what one of my friends told me once, they said, we built a plan. The good news, Patrick, is that we were green on most of the things in our plan, but when the quarter ended, we missed our numbers. And they said, how could that happen? And I said, well, that's because you had the wrong plan. If your plan was green, but you failed, well, then I'm sorry, you had the wrong plan. So let's make sure you have the right plan. First question I want to ask is, do you have the things which are critical for achieving your financial goals? Are they on your plan, right? Are they on your plan? If you have some space, maybe consider, are you making anything in your 3-year plan happen? And of course, I want to make sure it achieves your SHAG. So these are the few questions I ask just to test your annual plan. Not too many questions, just a few. The bottom line, though, is whatever key initiatives you pick, is that going to make you a better and stronger company. So think of being able to improve your company 3 to 4 different ways for the year, and you get to the end of the year, you're a better, stronger company. Now, the hard part is say no to everything else, okay? I promised you a couple of pitfalls, and I want to show a couple of them to you. The first pitfall that I see that really torpedoes a plan is just too much of a good thing. So if you guys saw the movie, I don't know if you did or not, I have kids, so I saw this Meatballs movie. But if you saw the movie, you'll see that too many delicious meatballs falling from the sky didn't really help them either. So too many ideas, from the buffet of opportunity, too much of a good thing can kill you. So if you don't say no to all the other ideas, your team gets unfocused, pulls you in different directions, and resulting in crises and firefighting. What you want to do is have enough confidence in the annual plan you put together that you can say, hey, that's a great idea, but we're not going to do that. We're going to do this because we spent the time discussing this, right? So Jim Collins, in his book How the Mighty Fall, one of the key things he talked about how these great companies fell was their inability to say no, that they actually overate from the buffet of opportunity. So how do you choose, right? How do you choose? Well, first, it's got to be aligned to your strategy. So if you don't have the right strategy, or if you don't have a good strategy, and your execution plan isn't working towards that, then I want to share with you that you might be running really, really fast just towards the wrong targets, right? And nobody wants that. We want you to run really, really fast towards the right target. So align to your strategy in order to run fast towards your right target. And I said it before, I'll say it again, I'll probably say it 5 more times today, is it going to help you achieve your SHAG? You've come up with this beautiful, somewhat hairy, audacious goal. And by the way, it's somewhat hairy and audacious, right? Which means you don't have an appetite for anything else, guys. I mean, it's a big, audacious goal. So does it help you achieve your SHAG? Otherwise, kill the idea for now. Put it in the parking lot. Don't kill it. I mean, put it in the parking lot and keep it, right? And then, of course, you want to debate, discuss, and choose. In one of my earlier webinars, I suggested that you want to make sure that you have enough discussion so that people actually come to an agreement versus feeling like they compromise. Because if people compromise on their ideas, it comes back to haunt you. But if you had the proper discussion, you agree on what actually gets done, then that's a good year ahead of you, right? The second pitfall is building a financial model without the doing model. And I kind of mentioned this earlier on, but I really believe this. Guys, if you start with last year's financials and you say, okay, in 2011 to this year, we achieved X, Y, Z, and let's build a plan bottom up, all right? A plan that is comfortable that we can achieve, all right? And then build a financial plan on that. All you get in 2012 is a comfortable year which is not memorable, okay? It's going to be boring. It's going to be boring. The great companies all have a goal, have a great goal, and stake in the ground. So I kind of mentioned this before already. I want you guys to consider starting with that big goal, right? And then do your bottom-up planning, and then build your and then figure out what's in the gap, and then build your financial model. Build your financial model after you figured out your doing model. Don't allow your financial model to limit your doing model when you're in the creative phase. Now, after you've done all that and you're building a financial model, it would be practical to say, okay, we can't choose X, Y, and Z because we don't have enough cash to make that happen. But fine. But I want you guys to really consider doing your doing plan first, then your financial plan. So that's the end of our first secret, which is what gets on the plan. So now's a good time for me to pause and take 1 or 2 questions before I move to secret number 2. So Ryan, are there any questions that may have come through?
Yeah, thanks, Patrick. We got some good questions here. So here's a question from Debbie. Debbie asks, what frequency do you recommend reviewing the key initiatives? Seemed like it would have to be at least monthly. What do you suggest?
I suggest, that's a good question, in reviewing your key initiatives, we first of all suggest that you do quality plans. So I actually suggest that you review your key initiatives once a quarter. In other words, when you do your quality plan, take a look at your key initiatives. Decide which ones you're going to power on. And then you're going to spend your life in the quarterly plan, executing that quarterly plan. All right?
And then the next question's from Bob. He says, can you explain what you mean by make a key thrust on your 3-year plan happen? Back when you were on your test questions for the annual plan.
That's a good question. So we asked this polling question earlier. How many of you used the one-page strategic plan? About half the audience did. So first, let me apologize. If you don't use the one-page strategic plan, I should have mentioned this. When I mean key thrust, on the one-page strategic plan, our tool, column number 3 is what we call your midterm goals, your 3 to 5 year plan. And in column number 3, we give you 5 slots to come up with 3 to 5 key thrusts that will help you achieve, big projects, big key things. So that's why we call them key thrusts, or capabilities that will help you kind of achieve your 3 to 5 year plan. And so one of the things I always suggest is when you think annual plan, go back and look at the strategy on column 3 and ask yourself, these are some of the key thrusts that we had said we were going to do over 3 years, and what can I do this year that will actually make one of those key thrusts, come through.
We have another question from Michael. Michael's asking, is failure not an option for key initiatives, or is it okay to fail, or should pressure be placed, and how?
So, is failure not an option? Well, yes, failure is not an option. So, when you think of what you're going to plan for the year, you decide on your key initiatives, and then you need to commit to it. You need to commit to it. So, failure is not an option. What was the second part of that question, though, Ryan?
Well, if failure is not an option, then how should pressure be applied?
So before pressure is applied, I want to go to my secret number 2, which is about how you actually do that. So, but pressure can be applied by, first of all, you have to make sure that everyone understands the key initiatives, and then you want to make sure that people have a real view of execution of what it takes to get that done. It shouldn't be a dream, guys. I think if you're looking at a 3 to 5 year strategy thing, okay, maybe you don't know how to get it done, but when you look at your key initiatives for the year, you really do need to know how to get it done. Then you can red, yellow, green it, with clear success criteria. Red, yellow, green your key initiatives, and then you apply pressure in the quarter, not on the key initiative, but in the quarter every single week to make sure you get it done.
I got one more question. How do you resolve the gap between your Shag and your bottom-up plan? Isn't the bottom-up plan the realistic one?
Yeah, so that's a good question. So, how do you resolve the gap between your Shag and bottom-up plan? Well, the bottom-up plan is always the realistic one, right, and it's the boring one. The top-down plan is the exciting one. So you have to put your people in a room and you have to suck each other's brains. And what I mean by suck each other's brains is you guys have to participate in discussion and debate. So one idea I have for you to brainstorm this gap, one of my partners in my previous company used to do this to us all the time, is whenever we came up with a stumbling block, he would ask us to brainstorm a really simple question. He would say, guys, just give me 20 ways to solve that problem. We used to call it our 20 ways to discussion. So it kind of goes like this, what are 20 ways to solve X? So what are 20 ways to fund initiative Y? And then just come up with all kinds of ideas, and then you sift through the ideas, and usually we find a couple. So I've always found that the best ideas, fortunately, come from my team that's in the room with me if we just bother to kind of dig for our own diamonds. Okay, so Ryan, I'm going to move on, okay, to secret number 2. And by the way, if there are questions that came in that I was not able to answer, I'll be happy to answer them in my blog, email it back to you guys. So, don't feel like if your question didn't get answered, it won't get answered. I promise you, every single question that comes in today will get answered personally by me. Okay, secret number 2 is that you fill your key seats. I kind of mentioned Jim Collins just now, and here's his book, right, How the Mighty Fall. And the other thing that he said in there is that these guys fell because they had initiatives that did not have key execution seats filled. So every initiative needs a who, okay? There's no who, there's no do. So I know that sounds kind of cute and rhymey, but if you don't have a who assigned to it, don't take that initiative. or delayed until you have a who. So how many hats can one actually wear? I mean, I've seen this happen at many, many companies, and happens at your company as well, I'm sure. They're new initiatives. There's more stuff to do. We look back a year later, we're all mad. Why? Because it didn't get done well. Some of them didn't get done at all. Why? And you know what? We gave it to an A player, someone key in organization. Give it to our best guy. And why didn't it work, right? Why didn't it work? Well, I'll share with you that sometimes even an A player becomes a C player with too many hats. So you risk important projects without with key initiatives by not putting a person in that seat, or by the person in that seat already having too many seats to sit on, and his butt's beginning to hurt. Okay, and there's only so many hats that you can pile up on somebody. So what you want to do is use our people tool. This is Gazelle's people tool, and this one we created this tool to think of your organizational structure. The first column represents the role or the key position, and then the next column is the name, and then you move forward. So the first two columns, I'm sorry, the role and the name. And I want you guys to think of changing this template. In other words, let's say you have a big major opportunity coming up. You don't quite know how to attack that opportunity. Take the same template. Okay, just rewrite the first column into the key roles for that opportunity, right? And then you can think about who's going to fill that role. What are the right results? Okay. Too often we run off into projects without understanding what the right results are. For the gentleman who asked earlier, the person who asked earlier about holding people accountable or applying pressure, you would apply pressure to two areas. One, you want to know what the right result is. What's the result that we expect from that initiative? And then secondly, are we on track? How do we know we're on track? Think about it. Work with the person up front to think about what is the leading indicator that you would actually look at so that you can know that the person is on track. So to illustrate this, I just want to share with you, one of my personal clients, Avid Exchange, they're right here in Charlotte, North Carolina. They're a fast-growing software as a service company. And they very recently, this is also an example of something that was in their annual plan that actually got accelerated 6 months earlier. And they decided to get into the payment business. And when they did that, it did a few things for them. First, it actually accelerated something that forward into the year that wasn't quite on the plan, so they had to figure out a way to fund it. Then we sat down and we said, okay, guys, and let's make sure that this is a really big opportunity. Let's figure out how many resources are missing, or first of all, what are the key seats, and therefore, how do we fill them? Turned out they had to hire about 14 people. So they ended up calling their initiative Pay 14 because they had to hire 14 resources to fill that key initiative. That, by the way, became one of the critical things that to do in one of the quarters, to go hire these human beings. Otherwise, they could not fill this initiative. In the meantime, what do you do, right? In the meantime, what do you do? Not do this initiative? Of course not, because this initiative was so important to them that their key members took on different roles in this initiative, but then they made the trade-offs. They decided that certain other things in the company would be less important than this, so they made the trade-offs. And then you have to do that. So if you take on big projects like that, you want to step number one, figure out, do we have people in the key seats? Okay. If you don't, then you need a hiring plan or a plan to fill, right? And then if you want to get going, and you want to put existing people in those seats, that's fine. Then you have to think about what you're going to deprioritize for those people. Otherwise, you'd be unsuccessful in the new thing, and you'd be unsuccessful in the old thing. So the whole resource thing is key. I'm going to pause for a couple more questions before I go into the last two things here. And by the way, as questions come in, one of the things that I've noticed, the reason why I'm pointing this out, is one of the big failure points I've seen in a lot of companies I work with is that we forget about the people execution side of the equation, right? We think of the doing plan, but then we didn't think of the resource plan of who's going to do what, and not just who, but do we then give them the necessary resources, financial resources, and other resources to get it done. So Ryan, any questions before I move on?
Yep, we got a question here. It says, I noticed there are a list of functions and titles on the people sheet. Are those the ones that you suggest companies have?
Well, yes and no. I mean, those are the typical ones we see. So if you're using this for your company, I've always believed that it's easier to edit than to create. If I gave you a blank sheet, you have trouble coming up with stuff. So feel free to edit all those. These are just brain starters. Ask yourself, what are the functions in your company? One of the examples I always get is if I'm working with a software company, they'll say to me, hey, Patrick, but I don't have manufacturing. What do I put here? Well, yeah, I mean, you do have manufacturing. It's really, the development team, software company. So, so think about what would be the role in your company. Just use this as a template that you can adjust and edit.
I have a question from Bob here. It says, we have a small nonprofit, and most of my staff wears multiple hats. Should they not wear more than one hat?
Well, multiple hats is okay. I think that the most is probably somewhere between 3 and 4. 3 or 4 hats is typically the max. Of course, this also depends on how bright that candle is burning. Some people burn the candle at both ends and in the middle as well. So I think it's very, very different for every person in your team. But usually, I think north of 3 to 4 hats, you're probably burning out somebody.
And I got one more question from Greg. So at a level closer to the plan, do you fill the seats around the initiatives?
Say that again, Ryan, like at a level?
It says at a level closer to the plan, do you, quote, fill the seats around the initiatives?
At a level closer to the plan. I'm not quite sure I know what that means when you say at a level closer to the plan. So let me answer your question as best I can. I mean, I think that your key initiative may have things where you have to first of all put a name on it, so you have a human being tied to the key initiative. Now that human being will probably take that key initiative and break it down into different projects that other human beings will be accountable to. But I think you always want to have one neck to ring on the key initiative.
And one other question, what's the difference between leading and lagging indicators from SID?
Okay, so the lagging indicator is a result, right? So think of it as a result indicator. How would you measure the results you expect? And then the leading indicator is an indicator that you are going to achieve your results. So, for example, I want to hire 14 people. Well, to hire 14 people, I need to have 3 final interviews for 14 people. So 14 times 3, whatever that number is, that would be my leading indicator that my recruiter is getting me enough final interviews so I can actually achieve hiring 14 people. So for example, if I only have 10 final interviews, there's just no way. I don't even have to look at 14. I mean, there's just no way we can even get close to hiring 14. So the leading indicator gives you early warning that you know how either that person's doing a good job or needs some help to succeed. Okay, so we have a few minutes left. Let me finish up secret number 3 and 4. The next step is a communication plan. We want to make sure that you have a plan that you're sharing with your team. The goal is not to educate, by the way. The goal is to excite and to inspire. And so sometimes we forget that we live in a people-to-people world, right? We live in a P-to-P world. The best plan is useless if the people don't get it. So your plan must be understood and executed by the individuals in a team. And it's not just good enough for them to understand it. They have to internalize it. They have to personalize it. And really the question that they should be able to answer in the hallway test, right? First, of course, is what's the year about? But the other question they need to be able to answer is how am I contributing to this fantastic year? Okay? If they cannot answer that question of how am I contributing to this fantastic year, that's one of those minor majors, one of those minor issues that will stop you from having a great plan. So, sometimes we just get so caught up in doing the plan, we forget that it's the people that have to execute. So you want to communicate. I'm going to give you an agenda or a list of things that you may want to consider communicating to your teams. So, first is why it's an exciting year. This is our year, by the way. It's an exciting year for all of us. What's the goal? What are the key initiatives? And why this year is important to us. By the time we finish this year, we will be X, Why is that? So you're kind of sharing the Definition Postcard a little bit, right? Secondly, if you want alignment, you got to connect. You got to connect it back to your longer-term plan, to your big hairy audacious goal, to your 3 to 5 year plan, to why you guys even care about this as a company. What's your purpose? And then, to me, as an individual team member. And then the third part is this is our doing plan, how we will execute it with our key initiatives, right? This key initiative will be executed in Q1. This one's going to be executed in Q3. This one in Q2. How are you going to actually execute it? What's the execution plan? How do you execute your key initiatives that you're doing with your people, with your core values, with your behavior? There may be some things that you may have the opportunity to share with people how your core values of the company actually help you with a competitive advantage because of this key initiative. And then who's going to do what to whom when, right? That's with our people. And then the last thing I put there is how do I contribute? I mean, you've got to get this down to itsy-bitsy level. I mean, like every single person in the room needs to know how they will contribute, okay? And then the last thing before we finish up is you have to QA your plan. So why is it that execution sometimes fails? And I'll share with you that one reason why I see execution fail sometimes is that we didn't have the confidence. You know, we just didn't believe that that a plan could be done. So do you believe in your plan, first of all? Does your team believe in the plan? Or are people going, oh my God, this is insane. I mean, you know, we've got to have 10 more human beings here. We don't even have 5. Oh my goodness, this is no way it's going to get done. So does your team believe in the plan? Okay, let's QA it to make sure the best companies will now slow down after they've done their plan and spend the time QAing it, right, making sure that the plan is truly executable, okay? And this is a biggie. This is a biggie. Don't allow your ego to ignore the pleas for help from folks in your team that seem tentative or worried that they have too much on their plate. You've got to help them deprioritize. You've got to help them choose. If you don't help them choose, then fate's going to choose for you, all right? You have to help them see how to get this important initiative done. Don't just say, you know what, make it happen, make it so, see you later. See you later gets you 2 things half-baked, not 1 thing fully baked. So you got to help your team see past the difficulties, make sure that they have the confidence to execute the plan, get rid of those risks. So the last section on this tool is a small, quick checklist for you to just kind of make sure you have 100% confidence and to QA your plan. So, you know, did you consider the right things that we walked through today? You know, your shag, your start, stop, keep, your opportunities and threats. Does it help you with your longer-term strategy, your 3 to 5 year plan? And once you've done all that, is it a good execution plan? You know, is the goal clear, right? If you can put a red, yellow, green on it, it's clear. So please, this is not a big heritage goal where you're not sure how to achieve. This is a stretch goal for the year, which means you should know how to achieve it, right? You must know how to achieve it. And you need to be able to describe what success looks like, all right? Do you have a critical number to guide us, okay? I didn't cover this one. I covered it in the last webcast, you know, critical numbers. How do you use critical numbers? And I always suggest that you have a critical metric that guides you to achieve your hairy audacious goal for the year. The second critical number to balance you. By the way, all the webcasts that we do are recorded. So if you feel motivated to catch the previous webcast on critical number, send us an email, let Deb know, and we'll send you the link to that, and you can enjoy that as well. But it will address the 2 items on here about critical numbers. And then did you visualize each of the 4 quarters, right? You don't have to build out a full plan for the quarter. You just need to visualize it. You know, so giving the example of image first again, you know, it's like Q1 or 2, let's work on customer loyalty. Q3, let's work on, you know, let's work on growth. Q4, let's work on associates. Something like that. You want to have a skeleton plan. Are your key execution seats determined? You know, back to the store of AvidXchange, how they were able to say we need 14 key execution seats. Are they filled, or do you have a plan to fill those seats? So either they're filled, or you have to have a plan to fill those seats before you can check this off. And then the communication plan. The last one is kind of a little bit blurred out. Communication plan to the rest of the company. You know, do we have that? Do we have your date set? Do you have your plan ready to share with the company? So that's the key thing. Is if you think about what it takes to build a fantastic year, you know, we've done this for more than 1,000 companies. I'm sorry, more than 1,000 planning sessions for hundreds of companies. And what we've seen is that the best companies will take the time to really visualize a strong plan, communicate it to their people, put the right people in the right seats, and then get that year done. So I'll take a few questions here before we end our lesson today.
Okay, Patrick, I have one from Mark. Mark's asking, do you suggest rewards or celebration when goals are met? And what kind of rewards have you found to be effective yet reasonable?
That's a great question. Absolutely. You know, together with your shag, then you can create a theme for the year, and then with the success, you then have a reward. So rewards, those are very subjective. I mean, I think a lot of it depends on what motivates your team, your people. If you want to use financial rewards, for example, you want to use bonuses, make sure you tie it to performance versus just, putting in extra time. Make sure you tie it to performance. So I think performance-oriented things that can be tied to milestones are very, very exciting, whether the reward is financial or otherwise. Medicines, when we were young, we were very young. We had a very young company, and most of the time we rewarded our team by having big ice cream parties. So it didn't cost us a lot of money, but we had ice cream parties. We had movies. We took the whole company to see the movies and stuff like that. It was a lot of good fun for the team. So a lot depends on your culture, and a lot depends on what you're trying to achieve.
Okay, I have another question from Steve. Steve asks, some stuff can't be done in a single quarter. So how do you prevent the one that runs over more than one quarter from impacting the priority for the next quarter?
That's a good question. So something can be done in a quarter, absolutely right. And I'll give you back the example of Image First. We thought that the customer loyalty program could be created, launched, and digested in a quarter, and we couldn't. So what happens, what you do is you have to make a decision. You can take 2 quarters to do it. That's okay. Or if you're almost there and you only have 1 or 2 people focused on it, a couple, not so much, not a full ball kind of a resource thing, you can still finish it up in the second quarter and begin to have a new theme for the new big thing for Q2. All right? So that's a judgment call. If you have a few things more that pushes into the end zone and you don't feel that's risky to do that, you would create something else for Q2, and then this would be like a minor thing for Q2 that you finish. But if you need more focus, if you're halfway there, I would say put the gun down and just finish this one up before you take on something else. And I know that's hard to do, but finishing up that key initiative with a true focus in the second quarter is going to give you much more benefits than opening up a new one.
I have a question from Lois. How do you celebrate getting part of the way to the goal when the work was worthy?
How do you celebrate getting part of the way to the goal? So I read yellow, green, everything, right? So green is the goal. Super green is the stretch goal. Red is unacceptable performance failure, and yellow is in between. You need some progress. So I think a lot of it depends on how you actually define the goal. So I would make green a little bit more achievable. And so if you have achieved the green goal, but you haven't achieved the stretch goal, you can still celebrate, okay? I would not celebrate if you were red. if you already achieved redness in the goal, I wouldn't celebrate. I would myself, But as you get closer to the green goal, I would be happy to celebrate. Now, be careful that you're not rewarding what you promised to hit the goal if you didn't hit the goal.
I have one more question. This one's from John. When I communicate our plan to the rest of the team, do you recommend a town hall meeting type of setting, or do this department by department?
That's a good question. Actually, both. First, you want to communicate to everyone. Have a town hall meeting to create excitement and buzz. Then have a department meeting to discuss how to do this as a team, right? So now I'm really excited, thank you very much, but how do I actually do this? So you want to do both. So I think we're at the top of our hour, right? I think I want to make sure we end on time. We start on time, we end on time. So I want to thank everyone for coming. And a survey is going to pop up after this webcast ends. That will help us, do a better job for you all continuously. I do this every quarter. It'll help us make sure that, the next one gets better and better and better. So, as I said, we've helped more than 1,000 companies with their planning sessions, and I hope that this tool you'll find helpful. I typically blog on things once a week, so if you want more stuff, you can come to the blog. And any questions that did not get answered today, I promise you I'll answer it with an email and in my blog.
Thanks so much, Patrick. Well, this concludes our webcast for today. You'll find links to the recording of this webcast and the tools that Patrick mentioned on our website at www.gazellesystems.com. And you would please help us by taking a minute to give us some feedback on the webcast after it completes. You'll see a screen right after we close the webcast, and you can just answer just 1 or 2 survey questions for us. We want to make sure you're learning on these webcasts and the content is applicable to you. The webcast was recorded, and you'll receive a link to it via email as soon as it is available. So again, thanks so much, and have a wonderful day. Thanks, Patrick.
Thank you. Bye-bye.